One of the things, getting back to your amazing medical experience, you've been very articulate on the Obamacare issue. And one of the things I'm wondering about is, after this midterm election, what would be your best guess as to whether Obamacare is repealed or not?
Well, it will not likely be repealed until we have a clear-thinking president.
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably looking at 2017.
Mm-hmm. But will the Republicans, assuming they take the Senate and they grow their majority in the House, would it not be the appropriate thing to at least put it back in the president's court
and let them veto it?
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing to have on record, no question about it. But I think the more important thing, and the thing that I'm working on right now with a number of groups, including members of Congress, is a very excellent alternative. And we've been rolling it out bit by bit. Save Our Healthcare website talks about it. The keystone is, of course, the health savings accounts, because it puts people in charge of their own health. And, a variety of mechanisms for funding it. But basically, with every American having a health savings account, they begin to take part in the financial responsibility for their health. So you sprain your ankle, you, along with your healthcare provider, decide, do I want to get an x-ray? It's coming out of your HSA. You need a physical exam for a new job? That's coming out of your HSA. Birth control pills? Your HSA. No Hobby Lobby situation. And, there are very few things that are coming out of your major medical or your catastrophic health insurance. Right. So what happens? It drops the price tremendously.
The market forces are at work.
And, of course, we make it possible for you to get your catastrophic health care anywhere in the United States. We introduce that degree of competition. You also provide flexibility by allowing family members to shift money within their HSA. So if you fall $500 short, your wife can give it to you out of hers, or your daughter, or your grandfather, anybody within the family, which provides enormous flexibility to cover almost any situation that's going to come up. And then if you have a major thing, that comes out of your major medical, which is easily affordable through your HSA. So, I mean, this makes so much sense. And there are a number of places in the country where large groups of people use HSAs. Very, very happy with them. You take a country like Singapore, which has a system similar to that. They call them medical savings accounts. They're all mandatory. I wouldn't necessarily make it mandatory because this is America. People get to do what they want. But I think you present such a compelling argument with something that works so well, you won't have to force people into it. They will flock to it.
Well, I remember first learning about that concept back in the 1980s. We were talking earlier about where we were back in those days, the 70s and so forth. But when I heard about that medical saving, it made so much sense. Sure. And I thought, well, surely this is what we're going to be doing in the next few years. But it's 35 years later.
We haven't. And in fact, the Affordable Care Act, the so-called Affordable Care Act, limits HSAs. Right. Because I think deep in their heart, they know that this is the antidote for the silliness that they're proposing. So let's suppress it. Let's put it back in the box. But also recognize that when people are in control of their own health care, they are looking for good use of their money. It brings the whole healthcare system into the free market realm. That's what controls quality. That's what controls pricing.
Staying with the book for a little bit, one of the things you deal with is the debt. Now, one of the things that I find interesting about this subject is how little you talk about dialogue and debate on issues. Why isn't the debt talked about at any time until 5 minutes before we reach the debt limit, and then there's hysteria and pandemonium? We've got to You know,
Well,
what's your solution to the debt?
Well, first of all, I think that's one of the reasons that Eric Cantor lost his seat.
Right,
because
that was a major issue.
He talks a very good conservative game, and I think he is a conservative. But every time the debt ceiling issue came up, he wanted to raise it.
Right.
Well, he didn't want to, but he raised it because he said we'll get blamed. Well, newsflash. You're going to get blamed anyway.
Look what happened.
so somebody at some point has to stand up with principles. And what I've said for a long time, way before you reach the deadline, you need to stake out your principles. You say, we're going this far and no further, and this is the reason. And explain to people what this debt means. $17.5 trillion, moving toward $18 trillion. Most people can't even comprehend that number.
No.
But if you try to pay $17 trillion back, $10 million a day, that's a lot of money. $10 million a day. You're talking almost 5,000 years. I mean, that's ridiculous. Right. And the only reason that we can sustain that level of debt is because we can print money. And the only reason we can print money is because we are the world reserve currency, a status that generally accompanies the #1 economy, which we have been since the 1870s.
Right.
A designation we are likely to lose in the relatively near future to China, who has a much stronger growth rate. The last quarter we grew at 0.1%. The coming quarter it's going to be in negative numbers. And if we get 2 negatives in a row, we're officially in a recession. But I think anybody who pays attention knows we're already in a recession. And, we're talking, well, look, the unemployment number, look at it coming down. It means nothing. It's the labor force participation rate. And we should have charts that we can show to people that show that it's been going down steadily. It's at its lowest point in 40 years. I mean, these are things that are not that complex to understand. But what we have to begin to do, and what I've been doing as I go around the country, is educating people about what it means. If we can't print money anymore, and there are a number of countries that are advocating that we not be the reserve currency because of our complete irresponsibility fiscally. And they're talking about a basket currency where there are a number of different currencies that form the basis rather than just the U.S. dollar. If we can't print money with the level of debt we have and the unfunded mandates that we have, I mean, you're talking $100 trillion or more dollars. With our level of debt, Greece overnight.
Right.
And there'll be chaos. Occupy Wall Street will be a walk in the park compared to what will be going on as people begin to panic and recognize that they've lost everything they've ever worked for. And, of course they don't talk about it. I'll tell you who does talk about it. Vladimir Lenin. One of the ways to destroy the United States, unsustainable debt.
Right.
And I just say, people, you got to wake up. You got to wake up. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but whether it's intentional or not doesn't matter. We'll still be destroyed.
Yeah, whether it's intentional or just sheer negligence, both parties are a part of it. And I think we're in a midterm election year. I think most people are expecting to see a kind of a sea shift for the Republicans here, but on this issue in particular, there's been no responsibility exercised by the Republicans. Just think how much bigger that mandate might be in 2014 had the Republicans been, enforcing some sense of responsibility.
I agree. I've been talking to a number of them, and I think they're starting to get it. So I actually am a little bit encouraged. I believe you're going to see some things over the next several months that will begin to pleasantly surprise me.
Well, I sure hope you're right, and I hope they're not telling you what you want to hear.
No, I don't.
'Cause I feel like sometimes that's what they do to me.
No, I think they're actually starting to understand the gravity of the situation that we're in, and we can't be playing around anymore. It can't be politics as usual.